Hi everyone. So today the question I thought I'd ask, because the subject has really been on my mind, it seems to be a theme for this month. It was addressed big time in the living transmission I did for the commander program. And the subject is emotion. It's a huge subject, kind of taboo for some people. Um, I used to be someone who was either swimming in them, completely overwhelmed in a way where they would just burst out at any moment. Just tears and just tears in all forms. Tears of joy, tears of sadness, tears of compassion, tears of whatever. And then there would be other moments when I was completely numb and I could not tell you a word to describe how I felt except nothing. Um, and yet I can't help but know and feel that as I move into my understanding of how the human body and the human being that we are really relies on being able to identify the different emotions, not wear them, not let them overwhelm us, not dive into them, but identify their presence because they are signals. And most of us have heard the expression that emotions are actually energy in motion. And I think there's a differentiation to be made between the response, the trigger in our body that lets us know, oh, here's anger coming up, or fear, or sadness, or all of the different names we attribute to identify the subtle differences in emotions, and the backlog of energy that accompanies that emotion that hasn't been expressed. And yeah, that's what I want to address, because if we're someone who hasn't processed or disregarded the information contained in the emotion, we have most often not a backlog of of energy and emotion that accompanies that. And so when we feel that emotion coming through, we also feel the baggage that comes with it that has any limits. So that's what I want more of, and that's what I want to tap into. I just want to let the guidance speak about the daily. Emotion as a trigger response to life. Emotion as detection of where you stand in regards to what is happening in the moment. Emotions as the transmission of what's happening inside you in relationship to what's happening inside. And that's the nature of emotion. And humans have not, for the most part, been trained to read that translation in a way that serves. They've either been trained to deny it, confront it, take it, but never to actually embrace the message it has to say. Why? Simply because you have categorized the translation of how you feel in relation, what's happening inside of you in relationship to what's happening inside of you, in categories of good or bad. And there's a judgment, there's a proper behavior that you sense should be observed that disregards or discredits the value of what the emotion is trying to tell you. Most of the time, for example, let's use anger. anger. It's not right to be angry. It's not something you should cultivate. That it's not an appropriate behavior, and that it leads to worse behavior, and you don't want to go down that path. And so, whenever there's a sense of inside of you feel happening something that brings up in response to your environment, feeling of injustice, frustration, rage, discouragement, all the things that we associate with anger, we deny ourselves the chance to read in between the lines of that emotion what it translates. Most often, when we are translating into an emotion that we call anger, it's because we are perceiving a incoherence between what's happening inside of us and what's happening outside. And that incoherence, we've been told, is unimportant, when in actual fact it is vital to us re-establishing harmony and coherence. But it doesn't go through, or it cannot happen if we disregard the anger, push down the anger, or give in to the anger. It happens when we realize there's anger. What is not incoherence? What am I picking up that is translating into an emotion of anger? And that's what we want to put your attention into. It's just, this is something that raises frustration, that creates a discomfort. So it doesn't have to be anger, right? But we just used it as an example. It's a question of what is the incoherence between my inside world and the outside world that I am picking up. And understanding that when we speak of the inside world, it's an inside, it's the place where everything is meant to be harmonious. Everything is made to make sense. Everything is meant to be evolving towards more well-being. This is the natural way that your inner sanctum feels that life should be, because this is the natural way life should be. And when outside of you things are happening that don't display this coherence that you inherently know is the state of things, having a moment of pause to open that packet of information, that data set, and say, what is not feeling coherent? Where are the disparate pieces? And to just have the space to observe that and validate that I have received a feeling that displays incoherence between what I believe should be and what is. And that's all it is. And when you have a feeling of joy, feeling of enthusiasm, of interest, of curiosity, then your inner space is in line with what's happening in the outer space, and your in the outer space meaning the environment around you, and you're feeling the positive coherence. So basically, it's coherent or not coherent, and you, all of us, have given it names to identify, to understand, when in fact what we're trying to understand is not so much the name of the emotion that's felt, but open up the data and see where the incoherence is, and just have the possibility to view the incoherence. And the incoherence comes usually in some parts of you having a view of this, and the world or the experience showing a view like this. And it's never you that is completely out of alignment, or that is completely out of alignment. It's just that the information presented needs to be seen through a lens that is common, so that the information can then find its way enough to make sense. So I'm not saying that The situation has to be transformed. We're only saying that if there is a feeling of incoherence, it's simply because there's displacements between the perspectives, and there is always a way to bring those perspectives back in alignment, to understand, to bring coherence. It doesn't mean you will agree, or this is the path you would have chosen, or that this is the way you would have done things, but there is a way for you to understand and for it to make sense, and all you're wanting is that understanding. All you're desiring is that to reestablish coherence, to allow you to understand either what the other person's perspective was, intention and objectives, and then you can work towards, or not, if it doesn't suit you, part ways, but it's just, there is a desire. It's as if you have a computer and you're inputting data the computer cannot process. The computer desires to process the information. It doesn't desire to show you always a positive result. At least it desires for you to have the information translated so you can make sense of it. And this is what is not happening when you're faced with negative, strong emotions. And it is able to process it when you're faced with positive emotion. I hope that this clarifies, but the ability to get into the space where you can actually read the non-coherent information, or view it, requires for this backlog of emotional energy to not come into play. So it's taking the habit of uh, taking walks in nature, of emptying the the memory RAM. In your computer, if you don't close all the programs, or turn it off to restart it, or clear the space, all of that background stuff keeps running and it impairs the speed of your computer. So it's the same for you. By taking time to go in nature, by doing physical activity, you are allowing that extra space of backlog of emotional energy to be released without it needing to have a name, needing to do anything of that sort, so that you have the space to analyze incoherence and bring it back into coherence. So we hope that that has brought it into clear understanding. Yes, that was a bit of a longer one. I hope that this perspective of emotion helps you make a bit more sense of it, and helps you feel a difference between what the emotion can bring to you and how the backlog can interfere with, and how it's possible for us to just release that backlog in order for us to have the ability to translate, to bring back into coherence, to just see the perspective and then make a decision. Because the emotion itself does not dictate an outcome. It just presents the fact that the information is not coming through.